My wife thought she could give me two options: witness her intimate reunion with her ex as an extra in my own life, or just stay out of the way. But I chose a third, removing her from my path with the same precision one uses to eliminate an error. Hello, Reddit. I'm Caleb, 33, and I run a specialized custom motorcycle shop in Portland. We build bikes from scratch, do complex restorations, repairs, and I also deal with making sure 6 mechanics don't kill each other during peak season. I spend so much time around engines that sometimes I feel like I smell like gasoline even when I'm asleep. That Tuesday started like any other. 2 of my guys called in sick, which meant I had to shoulder most of the work on a custom Harley that was already behind schedule. I spent the morning fabricating a fuel tank. In the afternoon, I fine-tuned the exhaust system, and for a glorious finale, I spent nearly 3 hours arguing on the phone with a supplier who didn't understand the concept of urgent. When I got home at 7:30 p.m., I could barely stand. 12 hours of work, covered in grease, my back in agony. I just wanted to heat up anything, take a shower, and watch TV without thinking. But as I walked through the door, I noticed something strange: an absolute silence. Laura's car was in the garage, so she had to be there, but the house seemed empty. I found her in the kitchen. She wasn't cooking, cleaning, or checking her phone. She was just standing in front of the counter, arms crossed, staring at me. She was dressed up, makeup impeccable, hair perfect, as if she were about to go out. "Hey," I said, putting my keys on the counter. "Everything okay?" She didn't answer right away. She observed me with a seriousness that, combined with her silence, made me tense up. I took a bottle of water from the fridge, opened it, took a long drink, and still she didn't react. "We need to talk," she finally said. I put the bottle down. "All right, what's up?" She took a deep breath and leaned against the counter, arms still crossed. "This life isn't working for me anymore," she said with absolute calm. "What do you mean?" I asked, completely baffled. "I'm bored. Our marriage is flat, and I want to explore other options." I froze, too exhausted to process such a statement. It was as if my ears were distorting reality. "I'm sorry? I'm giving you 2 alternatives, Caleb." "What options?" My phone vibrated with a message from the shop. The diagram for the pending bike was still on the table, but none of that mattered. Something in her tone confirmed that what was coming wasn't good. We had been married for 4 years and together for 6. We had always been fine. In recent months, I had noticed her distance. Yes, always engrossed in her phone, attending networking events, wellness workshops, and consciousness expansion talks. She would come home talking about new philosophies, limiting beliefs, and how love needed to be redefined. I thought it was just a phase, a weird period, a form of stress relief. I was completely wrong. "Can you accept that I want to explore something with Blake?" she said. "Or simply stay out of the way while I do it?" I looked at her, expecting her to laugh, to say it was a bad joke, but no, not a smile. I ended up letting out a disbelieving laugh. "I'm sorry?" She sighed as if I were being immature, as if it were obvious that I should support her personal growth. "I don't want to fight," she assured me. "I'm being completely honest. I'm not cheating behind your back. I'm giving you the opportunity to grow with me." The level of self-deception was stunning. She truly believed she was acting with integrity. "So, let me see if I understand," I said with the most controlled voice I could muster. "You want me to accept that you're going to sleep with Blake, your ex?" She nodded slowly. "And if I don't accept it, you'll do it anyway?" Another nod. "How long have you been planning this?" "A few weeks, maybe a month, but it's not like I just woke up one day and decided. It's been a journey of self-discovery and..." Cut the seminar speech. "How long have you been talking to him?" She bit her lip. 4 months. 4 months of emotional deceit, and now she wanted my blessing to take it physical. "It's not infidelity, if I'm honest with you," she added. I didn't respond. I had to remain calm to gauge the extent of this. She continued speaking, moving her hands gently, as if giving a motivational presentation. "People our age are rethinking relationships. Monogamy is an outdated concept. I've read, I've listened to experts, I've talked to people who have already moved past traditional models. What I feel isn't wrong. It's not betrayal. It's evolution. I just listened, not because I agreed, but because I needed to understand how far her disconnect from reality had gone. This isn't just physical attraction, she continued. With Blake, I connect intellectually, spiritually even. He understands parts of me that and it's not a criticism. But I've grown, and I don't plan on regressing. Blake, 34, her college ex, a supposed life coach who operated out of a remodeled warehouse that tried to look like an urban temple. I met him once, 8 months ago, at an event Laura dragged me to. Dim lights, hanging lamps, ridiculous names for coffees like Alignment and Awakening. When she introduced me, he gave me a handshake so soft I almost laughed. "What do you do, Caleb?" he asked with a fake smile. "I run a custom motorcycle shop. Building, restoration, all that." "That's great," he replied condescendingly. "The world needs people to keep the gears turning, the infrastructure. Someone has to do it." Then he turned to Laura and nostalgically started recalling a book they had read together in college, both laughing, finishing each other's sentences. I stood there like an unnecessary spectator. I should have noticed. I should have seen it coming. But I trusted her. Grave mistake. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I simply walked out of the kitchen. Something inside me clicked. She thought this was a negotiation, that I only had 2 options. I'd already chosen a third. When I returned, she was waiting for me, likely anticipating an emotional outburst she could use to her advantage. I responded without offering her anything more than a calm gesture and prepared words. "I need time to process all this." She smiled, relieved, as if she had just received a signal that I was moving toward the version of the partner she imagined. "Thank you for being so receptive," she told me. "This means so much to me." I nodded. I pretended to be processing everything, but that very night, as she slept soundly next to me, I knew exactly what my next step would be. I had made up my mind, and she didn't even suspect what was happening behind my silence. During the days that followed, Laura started treating me as if I were an emotional rehabilitation project. She left open articles on our shared tablet about non-monogamous relationships, alternative affective structures, and all sorts of discourse on personal expansion. She sent me links to podcast episodes with titles like Transcending Jealousy or Reclaiming Sexual Autonomy. She even printed out the testimony of a Seattle couple who claimed to have saved their marriage after opening it up. One morning she told me in all seriousness, "If you truly love me, you will support this. It doesn't have to be painful." I acted with precision. I smiled when necessary and said calculated phrases like, "I'm trying to understand. I want to support your growth." I pretended to be in a deep reflection process. What she didn't know was that the submissive posture I was playing was designed to get me exactly where I needed to be. Laura's newfound liberation made her careless, transparent. She started behaving as if it were no longer necessary to hide anything. According to her, she was already free, so there was no reason to hide her movements. I, on the other hand, observed every detail. I became the confused husband, the one who spends nights reading about modern relational dynamics to show interest, a whole character. But in truth, what I was doing was collecting every piece of information that I would eventually need. Her mistake was big and simple. She had always used our shared tablet for personal things, from calendars to emails and messages. We set it up together 3 years ago, connected to our family account, and she never updated passwords or logged out. I had total access, and everything I found there chilled me. I started by checking her calendar. There I found the first sign. Every Wednesday, for the past 3 months, a 2-hour block appeared under the name Personal Development, with a specific address in the Pearl District. That address was none other than Blake's loft. Then I opened her messages. She had saved his number under the name Catalyst. How original. At first they spoke like normal acquaintances, but as I advanced through the timeline, the conversation shifted. By the second month, they were texting every day, sharing thoughts, reflections, and phrases loaded with intent. In one of those conversations, she wrote, "I can't stop thinking about what we talked about last night." And he replied, "You've changed so much since college. You're more awake. I see you in a way Caleb never could. He's good, but he lives comfortably, and comfort prevents growth." I read those exchanges, feeling her reconstruct our history, transforming me into an obstacle, someone who kept her stagnant, while elevating Blake as an illuminated guide who was supposedly awakening her true potential. But the most revealing evidence wasn't in the texts, it was in the voice notes. She sent him recordings of 3, 4, or 5 minutes where she talked about her emotions, her frustrations, and her inner awakening. It was like listening to therapy sessions where the therapist was trying to sleep with her. One of those notes, barely 3 weeks old, stopped me cold. Today, Caleb asked me if I was happy. I told him yes, but it's not true. I haven't been happy for years. I've just been pretending. Meeting you again has made me realize I deserve more than routines. I deserve passion, connection, someone who challenges me. I haven't been happy for years. We had been married for 4. That meant, according to her, our union had been a mistake from the start. Excellent to know. I continued reviewing, and the story kept repeating itself. Audios, messages, confessions. She built a perfect narrative where I was the security blanket, the one who never moved forward, and Blake appeared as the man who would propel her to a new version of herself. Then I saw the most damning part. Every Wednesday for 3 months, she had been at his loft. I thought she was attending networking events or wellness workshops. She wasn't. She was with him, testing what she called her awakening. Then an event appeared on the calendar that made her plan even clearer. Cascades Retreat. A full weekend. Just below it was a note written by her. Test before the transition. She wasn't planning a simple affair. She was organizing her exit without conflict, without uncomfortable conversations. Without papers, she would just disappear emotionally and move into Blake's life if it worked. If it didn't, she'd return to me as if nothing happened. I was, according to her logic, the backup generator. But there was still more. One night while she was showering, a notification arrived on the tablet, a voice message sent by Maya, her younger sister. I recognized her immediately. She was 26, lived spontaneously, and always treated me as if I didn't deserve to be with her sister. She called me Captain Boring when she thought I wasn't listening. I opened the audio. "Do you really think Caleb is falling for this?" Maya asked, using that condescending tone she always reserved for me. Laura let out a light laugh, completely self-satisfied. "God, Maya, I feel so alive lately. And Blake is obsessed with me. You can't imagine how much." "Of course he is," Maya replied. "He told me I'm the only one who truly understands him. Much better than being tied to your Captain Boring for the rest of your life, right?" They both laughed as if commenting on the weather, and then Maya dropped the bomb. "By the way, he knows I'm dating Blake too, right?" There was an uncomfortable silence in the recording. I could hear Laura walking, surely looking for a corner where no one could hear her. Her voice changed when she replied. "He doesn't have to know. But are you okay with that?" Maya insisted. "With me sleeping with him too?" Another pause. "You're already sleeping with him?" Laura asked. "Yeah, for about 3 weeks now," Maya replied, as if it were the most normal thing. I had to replay that part several times to make sure I wasn't imagining what I heard. Her own sister was also having a relationship with Blake, and in that audio, it sounded like Laura was finding out at that very moment. When I finished listening to the recording, I remained motionless for a few seconds, leaning back on the sofa, staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything I had just heard. It was as if reality had cracked slightly, and I was trying to figure out where the fissure had begun. Laura's voice was choppy, first surprised, then incredulous, as if she didn't know whether to be angry or laugh at what she was hearing. Minutes earlier, I had heard Blake speaking with irritating nonchalance, with that confident tone of someone who believes he has the world perfectly under control. That security of his, almost arrogant, turned my stomach. He said, I heard Laura's voice, sharp as a blade, that we're adults, that love exists in abundance. There was a thick silence, the kind that hangs in the air when everyone knows something isn't right. Then a brief sound, Laura's bitter laugh, a laugh I had never heard from her, an echo that revealed more fury than irony. Of course, though, he said that, she spat, laced with sarcasm. Are you upset? No, I'm not upset, she replied, although anyone with ears would have perceived the tension in every word. I'm just trying to assimilate it. This is exactly what I wanted. No possession, no jealousy, just authentic connections. But if one thing was clear, it was that she was far from calm. There was contained anger in her tone, a mix of disappointment and annoyance she wasn't entirely hiding. So, we're good? Maya asked, as if seeking confirmation to continue with her own internal script. Yes, we're good, Laura replied, and the memo ended right there, leaving the conversation with an abrupt closure that chilled me to the core. I stayed staring at the phone for a long time, trying to decipher how we had reached that point. Blake was no illuminated guide, nor a mentor helping women find their emotional purpose. No, he ran a perfectly oiled system, a calculated rotation, a pattern invisible to the victims, but evident to anyone viewing the pieces from the outside. Laura, Maya, and surely others I hadn't yet discovered. All convinced they were part of something special, a spiritual journey or an emotional evolution, when in reality he was manipulating them to keep them trapped in his web of connections. And Laura, for some reason I still didn't understand, had decided to drag her own sister into the mess. Perhaps she thought that together they could learn to overcome jealousy, or some other recycled idea from the emotionally empty discourse Blake kept repeating. I saved absolutely everything: screenshots, messages, audios, fragments. I organized the evidence by date, category name, and context. I opened a new notebook, one I would always keep locked in my truck. Something in me knew that this physical folder would be necessary sooner or later, and as usual, my intuition was right. That same week, on Thursday night, I called Ezra. I had known him since our community college days. His parents had emigrated from Lebanon in the 90s, and he used to joke that his family had left half of Beirut behind, just to land in a town full of cheap supermarkets and rain. He and I became friends during night classes, when we both balanced full-time jobs with studies that seemed endless. He worked in a warehouse. I worked in private security. We were the only fools who handed in all the accounting assignments on time. 10 years later, Ezra was a senior engineer at Intel. He had an enviable salary, a sharp sense of humor, and a special ability to make even your worst decisions look like part of a greater plan. He answered on the second ring. "What's up?" "I need to talk to you." His tone changed immediately. "About what? Can you come over?" "I'd prefer to tell you in person." "Perfect. I'll bring food." Half an hour later, he appeared driving his old Civic, the car he swore he'd never sell because it runs better than all the Teslas put together. He brought 2 huge bags from the Lebanese restaurant he defended as if it were cultural heritage: shawarmas, hummus, garlic sauce, fresh bread. We settled into my garage. I didn't want to risk Laura hearing anything if she came back before the time Blake had imposed on her at his loft. He handed me a wrap, sat on an overturned bucket, and watched me attentively. "All right. What happened?" I told him everything, from the beginning to the last word of the recording. He didn't interrupt once. He chewed slowly, his eyes slightly narrowed, as if analyzing a complex diagram. When I finished, he put the plate aside, took a deep breath, and stared at me. "Bro, I'm going to ask you one question, and I need you to answer with brutal honesty." "Go ahead." "Are you thinking of staying with this woman?" "No, not remotely." Ezra nodded with satisfaction. "Good, because if you said yes, I was going to slap you so hard your ancestors in whatever Irish town you come from would wake up confused." Despite how miserable I was, I let out a laugh. "That's why I called you." Ezra took a napkin and wiped his hands, Then let's talk about the important stuff. What's the plan? You have enough to legally destroy her, but you can't just charge in like a bull. This has to be done with a cold head, with strategy. First, I want to see a lawyer, I replied. Understand exactly what all this entails. I can't move without knowing where I'm stepping. Wait, he said, raising an eyebrow. You once mentioned signing a prenuptial agreement, right? I froze completely. Yes, that's true. I had forgotten. We signed it 4 years before getting married. She wanted to protect an inheritance from her grandmother, about $90,000. Her lawyer drafted the agreement to keep her inheritance out of any division. And you accepted? I didn't care about her money, I replied. But I remember there was another clause. Something else. Something her lawyer insisted on including. Ezra saw the expression on my face and straightened up. You need to find that document tonight. We're going inside. I went to the guest room where we kept important files. I checked the right folder, and there it was. Prenuptial agreement. 15 perfectly organized pages with notarized signatures. I went through it page by page. Provisions on inherited property, percentages of joint accounts, definitions of property, until I reached page 8. The Infidelity Clause. I felt the blood rush to my temples. I read the paragraph aloud. In the event that either party engages in extramarital relations during the marriage, the faithful party shall retain the entirety of the primary residence, jointly acquired vehicles, and all assets obtained during the union. The unfaithful party waives any claim and shall assume their own legal costs during the divorce process. Ezra let out a smile I hadn't seen since the last time we won an amateur chess tournament together. Bro, he said, tilting his head, almost with compassion. She is lost. She doesn't remember it, I replied, certain. I'm convinced. Much better. He stood up. First thing tomorrow. Call a lawyer. Kaplan or Sullivan. The best. Take them this and let the downfall begin. And Blake? I asked. He needs to find out too. Ezra rubbed his hands together like someone preparing for a show. Do you want to tell him? I shook my head. I want him to find out from someone with reason to sink him. Ezra snapped his fingers with enthusiasm. He has a girlfriend. Right? I explained what I had found while reviewing Blake's social media, a 2-year relationship with a woman named Bryn, completely oblivious to the chaos. Ezra smiled even wider. This is going to be epic. You are going to dismantle his spiritual business. That's the goal. We spent almost an hour formulating a detailed strategy. Ezra turned every complication into an action map, steps, contingencies, risks. When he left, near midnight, the plan was clear. Consult with a lawyer, preferably Sullivan, to review the prenup. Organize all the evidence, audios, messages, clips, notes, everything in digital and physical folders. Let Laura enjoy her emotional retreat, believing she was in control. Serve her the divorce papers as soon as she returned, making it clear that her spiritual growth ended where respect for the marriage began. The 5th step was to observe how that fragile structure, that facade my wife had built, finally came crashing down. For that, I needed a solid plan. So, Friday morning, I met with a lawyer. His name was Sullivan, a man in his late 50s with a way of speaking so calm and precise that it inspired confidence from the first minute. I brought everything I had gathered, the prenuptial agreement, the iPad screenshots, my written notes, the complete timeline. He calmly analyzed each document, taking his time. He wasn't flipping through pages. He seemed to be assembling a mental puzzle as he reviewed each piece. When he finished, he looked up and told me, "You have documented everything impeccably. Legally, you are protected. The prenup is unbreakable, and there are direct confessions of infidelity in writing here. So, I'm well positioned? Much better than that. With this clause, Laura will practically receive nothing in the divorce, and her inheritance, what her grandmother left her, was separated in the agreement. That remains intact. But everything else," he gestured toward the folder, "is yours. You're going to be fine." I felt enormous relief, although there was still a road ahead. How long will the process take? There's a mandatory waiting period in Oregon, but if she cooperates, or even if she doesn't, we could have this resolved in a few months. If she doesn't contest it, it will be even faster. She's going to contest it, I replied without hesitation. He smiled with the certainty of someone who has seen hundreds of similar cases. They always think they can win, but when they see the evidence and understand the costs of fighting, they almost always back down. Legal fees multiply quickly when the battle is lost from the start. Let her go to that weekend retreat. I'll have everything ready for Monday. I left his office feeling lighter than I had in weeks. That same afternoon, I decided to face something I had been putting off. Contacting Bryn, Blake's girlfriend. I looked her up on social media and sent her a brief message via Instagram. Hi, Bryn. We don't know each other, but I have information about Blake that I think you should know. Can we talk? She replied within the hour. Who are you? Someone in a similar situation. What you do with this is up to you, but you deserve to know. She agreed to meet me for coffee on Saturday morning. I brought printouts of everything so she could see the evidence for herself without interpretation. Bryn turned out to be a kind person, and that only made everything harder. As she reviewed the pages, her face lost color, but she didn't cry. She stared at each page for a long time before asking, "Since when?" 4 months that I can confirm. Probably more. She nodded firmly, folded the papers, and finally told me, "Thank you for showing me. I know this can't be easy for you. I'm sorry." She gave a bitter laugh before adding, "And to think his entire discourse is about authenticity and transparency. It's his personal brand, and he's been deceiving both of us all this time." She stood up, adjusted her jacket with a calmness only seen before a declared war. "I'm ending this today, and I assure you that anyone who takes his workshops will know who he really is." I just nodded. Ezra's words echoed in my head. Watch everything burn. And it had already begun. Friday afternoon, Laura left for her retreat. She packed her bag as if she were going to a wellness center. Activewear, facial care products, those expensive things she buys to align her energy. She gave me a kiss on the cheek. "Thank you for understanding all this," she said with that rehearsed sweetness. "I think it will be good for both of us, for me to discover who I am, and for you to have your own inner process." "Sure," I replied. "I'm glad you're doing it." She left with an expression of newly acquired spiritual enlightenment, the product of a weekend she would use to cheat on me with another man, or men. As soon as her car turned the corner, Ezra arrived in his old Civic. I had alerted him by text that the house was clear. He walked in with his laptop under his arm and a huge smile. "Perfect," he said, settling at the kitchen table. "We start now, bro." "Start what?" "Watch." He opened his computer and went straight to Blake's website, that space where he promoted his personal growth workshops full of recycled phrases and empty promises. "What are you doing, Ezra?" "You're preparing the smart legal bomb with Sullivan and the prenup. I'm going to take care of the tactical attack, the one that hurts, but with style." He started by checking Blake's Google page. It had 32 impeccable reviews, pure descriptions of profound transformation and inner awakening. Ezra created a new email, took a deep breath as if he were about to play a role, and began writing a review, reading it aloud as he typed. I attended Blake's conscious living workshop expecting something authentic. Instead, I got 3 hours of recycled cliches and intense staring that gave me more discomfort than inspiration. The guy spends half the workshop bragging about his multiple conscious relationships. I asked for practical examples, and he said I wasn't vibrating at the right frequency. Save your $300. 2 stars because the kombucha was acceptable. Then he pressed send. "And that's not all," he announced. "I'm just warming up." Next, he opened dozens of pages for spam, insurance, fake spiritual retreats, timeshare sales, programs for retirees, warranty extensions. He started subscribing Blake to every single one of them. In a week, he'll be receiving over 400 emails a day. His inbox will be unusable. I couldn't hold back my laughter anymore. This is ridiculous. This is art, he replied proudly, and then came the masterpiece. He went to the registration page for Blake's next premium workshop, a weekend intensive for $900, limited to 12 people. Ezra created 12 fake emails, obviously made-up names, and registered all 12. When he finished, he turned to me with a triumphant smile, as if he had won an award. His prank sealed the final piece of the plan. While Sullivan, my lawyer, prepared the divorce, Ezra was taking care of starting the public downfall of the phony with whom my wife had been betraying me. And I just watched as, just as he said, everything began to burn. When he turned his laptop toward me to show me the list of registrations, I thought he was exaggerating again, but as soon as I read the names he had put down, I had to cover my mouth to keep from laughing too loudly. "Look at these," he said with an almost proud smile. "Hugh Jass, Anita Mann, Barry McCocker, Dixon Sider. Tell me that's not art." I couldn't help it. I laughed heartily. "You're a mess. A functional mess, but a mess nonetheless." He, delighted with himself, just settled into the chair. "I'm efficient, not destructive, and you know this is going to work. Blake won't suspect a thing. That guy barely pays attention to his own workshops. Do you really think he's going to detect that his entire registration list is a bad joke wrapped up as a logistical operation?" "He won't," Ezra replied with total certainty. "He's too busy trying to manage his little group of enlightened followers." I shook my head. "Do you actually enjoy this? Seeing me embroiled in someone else's chaos?" "Call it what you want," he replied, getting up and closing his laptop with a calculated thump. "You're crushing him legally with Sullivan and the Prenup, and I'm taking him down from his business system. Teamwork." He walked toward the door as if he had just finished an artistic project. "The digital phase is complete. Now let the pieces fall on their own. As soon as you serve Laura the papers, text me. I want to enjoy every update like it's a series." "Done," I replied. When he left, I took a deep breath. I opened Blake's Google reviews on my phone. The detailed opinion Ezra had left already had several helpful markings from strangers. It was incredible how quickly people started seeing patterns when someone dared to describe them, and that's when I knew the game officially began. The first thing I did was change the locks, not to definitively block Laura's entry, but because I wanted her to understand upon her return that there was a new barrier between us, one she herself had created. Then I started packing her things with a meticulousness I had never applied to anything related to her. I carefully folded her clothes and placed them in suitcases. I organized all her bathroom items into boxes I labeled with a marker. I didn't break anything. I didn't throw anything away. I just arranged everything as if preparing someone for a journey of no return. Ezra came over that afternoon. "We're moving furniture," he said as soon as he entered. "If you're starting a new phase, it has to look like it." Together, we completely reorganized the living room. We removed every wedding photograph, every couple portrait. In their place, I put up images that truly represented me, my travels, motorcycle projects, landscapes I always wanted to hang but never had the nerve to because she had better taste. When the day ended, I felt exhausted but light, as if I had lifted an invisible weight I had been carrying on my chest for years. That night my phone vibrated. It was Bryn. I broke up with him. He tried to make me feel insecure, but I made it clear he should continue his spiritual search. I just posted in the private ex-alumni group. They're already asking for refunds. I smiled, another piece falling on the board. Sunday night, it was Laura who texted me. Her message seemed straight out of a cheap spiritual retreat. "This weekend has been revealing. I feel like I'm stepping into my true power. I hope you're well." I sent her a thumbs up. It wasn't worth spending any more energy. She had no idea her life was about to change in a matter of hours. Monday, before leaving for work, I left an envelope on the kitchen counter containing the copies of the prenup and the divorce papers that Sullivan had prepared. I had already signed them. They were ready for her to do the same. The day passed without incident. I finished a paint design on a Triumph. I resolved a problem with a supplier who was delaying parts. I had lunch with my team and immersed myself back into the workshop routine, and that felt good. It reminded me that there was a whole life outside the emotional chaos Laura had created. But when I got home that afternoon, I saw her car parked. I knew the moment had arrived. I walked in and found her standing in the middle of the living room, staring at the wall where all our photos used to hang. She seemed to be trying to mentally reconstruct the emptiness. "Where are the photos?" she asked, confused. "I took them down," I replied. "There's an envelope in the kitchen. Read it." She went to the counter, opened the envelope, and when she saw the documents, her face lost color. "Are you serious?" "Completely." She looked at the prenup, and I saw her mind making connections she had avoided for years. Her hands trembled. This can't... It's exactly what you're seeing, Laura. You wanted your freedom. Here it is." "Caleb, please, can we talk this through?" "No. You've talked enough." It was the first time I saw her truly scared. And though it sounds cruel, it brought me a calmness I hadn't felt in a long time. She didn't leave that night. She stayed there, holding the papers as if the simple act of looking at them could change reality. I went upstairs, entered my room, and locked the door. She knocked twice. I didn't answer. The next morning, she was gone, likely to Maya's house. The process was officially underway. Wednesday, Sullivan called me. "She hired a lawyer," he informed me. "Says the infidelity clause is unfair and wants to renegotiate." I laughed out loud. "Tell her to review the prenup her client signed with her own hands and come back with something reasonable." "How long do you think this will take?" "A couple of months. She has no grounds. Her lawyer knows it, but he has to play his part." "Perfect. And be prepared," he added. "Laura's family must be moving now." He was right. Thursday, Diana, her mother, called me. I ignored it. Friday, Christopher, her father, called. I sent him to voicemail, but Saturday morning I received a message from Maya. "We need to talk." Family meeting at my parents' house at 2 p.m. I was watching soccer with Ezra when I showed it to him. "Are you going?" "Of course. I want to tell them exactly what their daughters did, and I want to see how they justify it." "Can I come with you?" he asked with that smile that always signaled trouble. "No, come on, bro. I promise I'll be good." "You've never been good." We ended up laughing, but I went alone. At 2 o'clock sharp, I arrived at Laura's parents' house. The whole family was gathered. Diana and Christopher on the sofa, Maya in a dining chair, and Laura there, eyes swollen and face visibly worn, as if she had been crying for hours or days. Christopher was the first to speak. "Caleb, thanks for coming. We just want to understand what happened." According to Laura, everything was very abrupt. Diana intervened with a patronizing tone that irritated me instantly. "Marriage requires effort. You can't withdraw as soon as something gets complicated." Maya, of course, didn't hesitate to add her passive-aggressive comment. "We always noticed you were a bit rigid, Caleb. Maybe if you had been more flexible, none of this would have happened." I listened patiently. I let them talk, let them try to build a narrative in which Laura was the victim, and I was the inflexible man who pushed her to seek new experiences. And when they finished, I took out my phone. I opened the notes where I had recorded every phrase, every date, every exact conversation. "All right," I said. "Listen to this. Laura, you told me. You have two options. Accept that I want to explore something with Blake or stay out of the way. And you also said, Blake understands aspects of me that you never saw. He recognizes my authenticity. I don't owe you monogamy. That idea is a social construct." I looked up. She didn't ask for understanding. She demanded permission to cheat on me. Christopher cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Well, people say things when they're confused." When I explained what was really going on, I made sure there was no room for doubt. I told them it wasn't confusion or a simple misunderstanding. It was planning. I took out my phone and showed them the calendar entry, the retreat reservation, and the messages that clearly exposed what Laura had been preparing for months. Then I looked directly at Maya because there was something else I needed to clarify. "And just so we're clear," I said, "you're also having something with Blake, right?" The color immediately drained from her face. Diana turned her head toward her with an expression of disbelief. "What are you saying?" she asked, stunned. Instead of answering, I played the voice note. I let it run until the end. The room fell completely silent when it finished. Diana looked dazed, as if her mind were trying to put loose pieces back together. Christopher clenched his jaw, not looking up from the floor. Laura, meanwhile, had a rigid face, as if looking for a way to disappear. I took a deep breath and spoke slowly. "I want you to understand exactly what happened. Your daughter spent months planning to cheat on me with her ex-boyfriend. Your other daughter decided to support her, even participate. Both of them assumed I would stand idly by, as if I lacked the capacity to react, and the only thing that affects them now is that I found them out." I stood up. "You all remember the prenuptial agreement, right? The one Laura demanded we sign. The same one that has an infidelity clause." Diana burst into tears. Christopher still wouldn't look up, completely motionless. Finally, Laura gathered some air. "Caleb, please, can we fix this?" "No," I replied, "we can't." I walked toward the door. Before leaving, I looked at them one last time. "You wanted to give me 2 options. I chose the third. Enjoy your freedom." I heard Laura sobbing behind me, Maya trying to offer explanations, and her parents demanding answers as I headed for my truck. As soon as I started the engine, my phone vibrated. It was Ezra. "How'd it go?" "Perfect," I replied. The divorce was finalized in September, 4 months after I served the papers. Laura didn't fight it. She had no grounds. I kept the house, the car, and everything we had built. She kept her inheritance and the little dignity she could still salvage, which honestly wasn't much. Blake's life fell apart. When Bryn's post in the workshop alumni group began circulating, several former clients came forward with similar stories. By July, his business had closed, and he had disappeared to Arizona. Maya didn't get off unscathed either. Laura ended up moving back to her parents' house, working remote support and posting vague phrases on social media about healing and finding herself. I didn't follow her. I wasn't interested. My phase with her was over. Over time, my life stabilized. Work became more manageable, and I started dating other people. Nothing serious, just enjoying myself. Ezra insisted that everything that had happened was the funniest novel he had ever witnessed, and told the story at parties as if it were a stand-up comedy monologue. Everything was quiet until October. It was a Friday night, and Ezra was at my house. We were playing video games and teasing each other as usual. Suddenly, loud, continuous banging echoed at the door. Ezra paused the game. "Expecting anyone?" "No." The banging continued, more insistent, and then I heard her voice. "Caleb, I know you're in there." "Laura." Her tone was worn, slurred. She wasn't sober. Ezra's eyes widened as if he had just found his favorite entertainment. "This is going to be good," he murmured. I stood up and opened the door. Laura was on the porch, wearing sweatpants and a huge hoodie. Her hair was tangled, her eyes swollen and red. In one hand she held an empty bottle. "We need to talk," she stammered, swaying. "No, we have nothing to talk about." "Yes, we do. You ruined my life." Ezra appeared behind me. "Technically, you ruined it yourself. He just kept everything documented." She pointed at him clumsily. "And who are you?" "I'm Ezra, Caleb's best friend," he replied calmly. "By the way, how's that spiritual journey going?" Laura became enraged. "You don't know anything." "I know you forgot you signed a prenup and you're at his door, not sober, 4 months after the divorce." She looked at me, crying again. "I made a mistake. Okay, I was confused. Blake manipulated me. I wasn't thinking clearly." I crossed my arms. "And that's supposed to make me feel guilty? What you wanted was permission to cheat on me while I stayed available for when it suited you. That's not true." Ezra took out his phone. "Want me to play the voice notes? I have copies." Laura took a step toward him. I stepped in front of her before she could touch him. "You need to leave." "I have nowhere to go," she sobbed. "My parents are sick of me. My friends don't want anything to do with me. Maya won't answer me. Blake is gone. And you moved on as if I never existed." She dropped to her knees and burst into tears. "Please, Caleb, please. I'll do anything. Give me another chance." Ezra looked at me, raising an eyebrow, waiting for my decision. I crouched down to her level. Do you remember when you gave me two options? Accept your affair or stay out of the way while you lived it. You never considered that I might choose something different, I told her. She nodded, crying harder. You're not sorry about what you did. You're sorry that it didn't work out for you. That's all. I stood up. Go home. Rest. Rebuild your life, because I've already moved on with mine. Ezra opened the door wider. And maybe try not to destroy your next marriage, he added. Laura remained on the floor for a few seconds, then staggered to her feet and wiped her face with her sleeve. I hope you're happy, she said with resentment. I am, I replied. Finally, we watched her walk toward her car. She didn't start it. Instead of turning the key, she slumped into the driver's seat as if the weight of the world had suddenly fallen on her. She rested her forehead on the steering wheel and started crying again, this time without restraint, as if she didn't even have the strength to pretend she was okay. Ezra and I stayed on the threshold, unmoving, watching. It was evident that, in her state, she shouldn't drive. Several minutes passed with her doing nothing but sobbing, occasionally looking toward my house with dull eyes, as if hoping I would invite her back in, which wasn't going to happen. Finally, a set of lights reflected on the street, partially illuminating her hunched figure in the car. A vehicle slowed to a stop behind hers, and I recognized the model immediately. The driver's door opened, and Diana hurried out with the tense stride of a mother who already knew the disaster she was going to find. She approached Laura without even looking toward my house, opened the passenger door, and tried to talk to her softly, though her face made it clear she had no more patience for this kind of scene. Laura barely reacted. Diana had to help her stand up. She leaned on her mother, barely holding her own weight, and allowed herself to be guided to the car as if completely resigned. When Diana settled her in the seat, Laura looked toward where I was again. Her swollen eyes reflected more defeat than repentance. She didn't say anything. Diana closed the door, walked around the car, and they drove away without a single gesture toward the house. Ezra let out the breath he had been holding. Bro, that was sadder than I imagined, he commented, shaking his head as if he had witnessed a scene from a dramatic series, not something real. I closed the door silently. Returning to the sofa, I felt a strange sensation. Not joy, but a clarity I hadn't had in months. It was as if the chapter were finally sealed with no possibility of reopening. Ezra took control of the video game and returned to his usual teasing, as if trying to force me back to normality. And it worked. As we played, the constant noise of the controller and the sporadic laughter cleaned away the last traces of the chaos Laura had left behind. That night, for the first time in a long time, I could breathe without feeling someone pulling me back to the past. Laura, with her decisions and her chaos, began to become what she truly was now, a distant memory, something that once affected me, but no longer had a place in the life I was rebuilding. A fragment of history that was slowly losing all importance, a definitive closure exactly what I needed.